smritirnaha. Synonyms: Andeshu in species of life born from eggs, Peshishu in embryos, Tarushu in plants, Avinishchiteshu in species of indeterminate origin born from perspiration, Pranaha, the vital air, he indeed, Jivam, the soul, Upadhavati, follows Tatra Tatra from one species to another, Sanne, they emerged, Yat, when Indriyagane, all the senses, Ahami, the false ego, Cha also, Prasupte in deep sleep, Kutastaha unchanging, Ashayam, the subtle covering of contaminated consciousness, the Linga Sharira Rite, without that of that Anusmritihi, there is subsequent remembrance, Naha, translation and purport by disciples of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai and his servants ki jai. Translation: The spirit soul is born in many different species of life within the material world. Some species are born from eggs, and others from embryos, and others from seeds of plants and trees, and others from perspiration. But in all species of life, the prana or vital air remains unchanging and follows the spirit soul from one body to another. Similarly, the spirit soul is eternally the same despite its material condition of life. We have practical experience of this when we are absorbed in deep sleep without dreaming. The material senses become inactive, and even the mind and false ego are merged into a dormant condition. But although the senses, mind, and false ego are inactive, one remembers upon waking that he, the soul, was peacefully sleeping. Purport: When a living entity is awake, the material senses and mind are constantly active. Similarly, when one is sleeping, the false ego recollects one's waking experiences, and thus one experiences dreams or fragments of dreams while sleeping. But in the state of prasupti or deep sleep, both the mind and the senses become inactive, and the false ego does not recall previous experiences or desires. The subtle mind and false ego are called linga sharira, or the subtle material body. This linga sharira is experienced in the form of temporary material designations such as I am rich man, I am a strong man, I am black, I am white, I am American, I am Chinese. The sum total of one's illusory conceptions of oneself is called ahankar or false ego. And due to this illusory conception of life, the living entity transmigrates from one species of life to another, as clearly explained in Bhagavad Gita. The spirit soul, however, does not change its constitutional position of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, although the soul may temporarily forget this position. To cite an analogous situation, if one dreams at night that he is walking in the forest, such a dream does not change one's actual position of lying in bed within his apartment. Thus, it is stated in this verse, Kutastha Ashayam Rute, despite the transformations of the subtle body, the spirit soul does not change. Srila Sridhar Swami has given the following example to illustrate this point. Etavantam kalam sukhamatam asvapsam na kinchid avedisham. One often thinks I was sleeping very peacefully, although I am not dreaming or aware of anything. It can be logically understood that one cannot remember something of which he has had no experience. Therefore, since one remembers peacefully sleeping, although there was mental or sensual experience, such a memory should be understood to be a vague experience of the spirit soul. Srila Madhvacharya has explained that the demigods, who are a superior race of human-like entities or the higher planetary systems of this universe, do not actually undergo the gross ignorance of deep sleep, so do ordinary human beings. Because the demigods have superior intelligence, they are not merged into ignorance at the time of sleeping. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Mattasmatir jnanam apohanam cha. Sleep is apohanam or forgetfulness. Sometimes by dreaming, there is smriti or memory of one's actual condition. Although in a dream, one may experience one's family or friends in an altered, illusory state. But all such conditions of remembering and forgetting are due to the presence of the super soul within the heart. By the mercy of the Supersoul, one can have a preliminary glimpse of the soul by remembering how one was peacefully resting even without mental or sensual experience. According to the authorized commentaries on this verse, Avinishchiteshu means Svedajeshu or born from perspiration. Srila Madhvacharya has pointed out, Bhu Svedena hi prayo jayante. The earth's dew is to be considered the perspiration of the earth, and various species of life are generated from dew. In the Mundaka Upanishad 319, the situation of the soul in relation to prana is explained. Yesho anuratma chetasa veditavyo yasmin pranaha panchada samvivesha prane chittam sarvamotam prajanam yasmin vishuddhe vibhavati yesha atma. The soul is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. This atomic soul is floating in the five kinds of air prana, apana, vyana, samana, and udana. The soul is situated within the heart and it spreads its influence all over the body of the embodied living entities. When the soul is purified from the contamination of the five kinds of material air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. Thus, in the innumerable species of life, the spiritual soul remains situated within prana or the material life air. Hare Krishna, that was a long purport. We'll chant Mangalacharan and then we will take on the discussion. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha
Krishna, Krishna, Krishna,
He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam Pangum langayate girim Yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhav Shri Chaitanya Mishra. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you everyone. Begging all of your blessings so we can share something for the pleasure of Sri Shadamalida, Gaur Chandra, Nrsimhadev and Shri Prabhupada and all of you, and for my own purification and inspiration in devotional service. Reading the translation again. The spirit soul is born in many different species of life within the material world. Some species are born from eggs, others from embryos, others from the seeds of plants and trees, and others from perspiration. But in all species of life, the prana or vital air remains unchanging and follows the spirit soul from one body to another. Similarly, the spirit soul is eternally the same despite its material condition of life. We have practical experience of this when we are absorbed in deep sleep without dreaming. The material senses become inactive, and even the mind and false ego are merged into a dormant condition. But although the senses, mind, and false ego are inactive, one remembers upon waking that he, the soul, was peacefully sleeping. Hare Krishna. So here in this verse, which is in connection with the question that was asked by Nimi Maharaj, sage Pipalayana, one of the Nava Yogendras, he has begun to reply. And the question was about how to actually recognize the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. King Nimi specifically asked, please explain to me the transcendental situation of the Supreme Lord Narayan, who's himself the absolute truth and the super soul of everyone. You can explain this to me because you're all most expert in transcendental knowledge. He generally asked it to all the Navayogendras, specifically, say, Sri Pipalayana. He is answering this question in literally 6 verses, 5 or 6 verses. It's not a bigger section, but the topic is very clear. How do we understand the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord? That is the topic. Shri Piplayanji started in verse 35. So you have heard from previous speakers in these last few verses, on these last few verses 35, 36, 37, 38, the discussion that Sri Pipalayana is actually putting forward. And in verse 35, he did speak about just a minute, I just closed. So in verse 35, he mentioned how the Lord is the cause of creation, maintenance, and destruction, and how the Lord actually enters into the body of every living being as super soul, and then enlivens the body. So that's all the subtle and gross organs of the body actually begins their function because the super soul is present. And then he speaks about how neither the mind nor the faculties of speech or vision or intelligence, any of these things cannot actually penetrate the supreme truth, because they are not, the soul is very minute, very infinitesimal. He says, what to speak of our intelligence, even the Vedas cannot actually fully describe the supreme truth, because the supreme truth is unlimited. And he says in verse 37 how that one supreme absolute truth expands into actually and is the cause of the material creation, because all the material world is expanded because of the energy of the Supreme Lord. And he says Brahman, here he calls the soul also as Brahman. Even the soul is an energy of the Supreme Lord. But the soul, as in compared to matter, is never born and will never die, nor does it grow or decay. So thus he was explaining the spiritual nature of the spirit soul. So first he explained how the Supreme Lord is the source of everything, and our bodies come from the Supreme Lord. And our intelligence cannot understand the Supreme Lord, and matter comes from the Supreme Lord, and the soul is also an energy of the Supreme Lord, which is superior to the matter. So here in today's verse, he is speaking how the spirit soul is born, though it is spiritual, it is born in the material world and takes on different kinds of bodies. Being born in different species according to its karma, takes up different kinds of bodies. However, we can experience the transcendence of the spirit soul from the body by realizing how that even in the dream state, when especially in the deep sleep state, when our senses are inactive, when even our mind and false ego are inactive, we still wake up and remember that we had a peaceful sleep. And this logic and this example is being given to denote that how the spirit soul is the ultimate experiencer of everything. However, when the soul identifies with the mind, identifies with the intelligence of false ego, then it does not clearly know that the soul is experiencing. It experiences it through the mind of other faculties because of the bodily conception. However, in the deep state, even when the senses, mind, and false ego are inactive, still, as Vishwanath Chakravarti spoke in the purport, that the soul is the one who's remembering everything, and that can be actually understood even in this state, because we cannot remember what we never experienced. If the mind and false ego and senses are all inactive, in one sense, is in a dormant condition in a deep sleep state, then who's that who remembered? And this logic and analogy is being given in order to actually understand this concept, that how the spirit soul is transcendental to the material body. So in the next verse, he will speak that how by engaging seriously in devotional service, one can understand not just that the Supreme Lord is transcendental, one can understand the self, one's own self, the spirit soul, is also transcendental. So only through bhakti, one will be able to fully understand that both the Supreme Lord and the self are all transcendental entities. To some extent, it could be practiced by the mechanical Ashtanga yoga process. However, it is not as blissful as the process of bhakti, because here the Supreme Lord cleanses the heart of the soul, and in that way it becomes easier for the living entity, because there is a relationship with the Supreme Lord. So bhakti is a better process and a thorough process for understanding this. When in the case of yoga, it is depends on one's own personal effort completely. However, here our effort along with the mercy of the Supreme Lord reveals the truth. And here we also see that whenever we understand that the Supreme Lord is really transcendental, not just understand, realize, when we have a pratyaksha, when we have a personal experience that the Supreme Lord is transcendental, it is not devoid of experiencing the soul as transcendental. So we can see how self realization is a byproduct of God realization, and God realization and self realization, they both are simultaneous. If someone is spiritually advanced, it's not that they only know Krishna as transcendental, they will also know the soul as transcendental, and they will also be aware of the other layers of their existence, like the bodily identity, the mental identity, the egoistic identity. They will be aware of the interactions of the soul with these. As an observer, they will be able to see all of these things in the consciousness of a servant of the Supreme Lord. So I know this is technical, but I didn't want to just do a springboard class, speak what I wanted to, uh, neglecting the purport and the subject matter. So from here, I will do the springboard class. If anyone has anything to ask or say, we could take it at this point, technically speaking. If there is anything generic you want to say, let's save that for the end. But if there is anything specific regarding the technicality of the verse or the subject matter between these verses and conversation, we will take that alone strictly. So
I,
otherwise,
I
we
have
go
um
on.
I have a question, Gaur Sharan Prabhu.
Yes.
So you were describing how the process of bhakti is advantageous because it involves Krishna's mercy, and it's my understanding that the mercy of Krishna is the same for everybody. Is that correct? I'm setting up a trap for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the mercy is the same, and
Mm-hmm.
then is Krishna Daya Prabhu so pure and advanced because he's making more effort? Because we have the same mercy available
Mm-hmm.
to us, but Krishnadaya is pure, serene, and advanced, and I'm fallen. So it's not the question of mercy apparently, but Krishnadaya Prabhu's sincerity and earnestness. Correct?
I won't come to a conclusion that easily, yes or no. I will explain you based on Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says two specific verses to understand this concept. Ye yathamam prapadyante tam tasaiva vajamyaham. So how we approach Krishna, accordingly he reciprocates to our surrender. So yes, the mercy is proportionate to our efforts. However, mercy is not dependent on our effort alone, because if you see, what did Gajendra, of course, Gajendra remembered. However, if you think of Prahlad Maharaj or like if you think of Dhruva Maharaj, the effort is there, but still the externals are not kind of dependent. Bhakti is not dependent on the externals. And the mercy, if you see, if a devotee becomes merciful, I think the better example would be someone like Mrihari or Valmiki. When Narada Muni took mercy on them, then they received Krishna's mercy. Nalakuvera and Manigriva received mercy because of Narada Muni. Or we could see in the case of Haridas Thakur, the prostitute got mercy but just by his association. So mercy is not, the very word mercy is beyond our qualifications or disqualifications. Sadhana is our expression of our desire and sincerity in wanting Krishna. Krishna is free, independent, Swarat. He can give his mercy to anyone he wants. We cannot say, I did more sadhana than this person. They are new, they are young, whatever. We can have our external measurements, but Krishna is not um, obliged. He is independent. He follows his devotees' desire. So if a devotee takes mercy on a particular living entity, mercy of Krishna will also follow. However, we cannot discount the role that effort plays on one devotional's life, because that's what shows what is our desire. How much are we eager to actually have Krishna's association? So the more we show and express our desires sincerely, then it makes it easy for Krishna to know and reciprocate.
Thank you so much, Gaur Sharan Prabhu. I never thought of mercy in that way. I've always thought of mercy as something almost impersonal, like a shower. But then mercy is coming from Krishna, who is inconceivable and wonderful, and so is his mercy. Thank you so much for explaining that aspect of Krishna's mercy. Thank you.
So here, again, just touching upon the verse. The verse is speaking how the soul is born in different species of life within this world, in multiple different types of species. Some species are born from eggs, some are from embryos, some are from the seeds of the plants, for the plants and trees, and some from perspiration. So in this way, there are various ways that the soul can enter into the material body. However, the spirit soul is unchanging. Even if it changes different kinds of bodies, the soul does not change. And despite its different material conditions of life, it is the same. And then a practical example is being given that even in the deep sleep state, when just the soul is active, and especially in the deep sleep state, when all the senses, mind and false ego, they are all dormant, still the soul retains its own memory. That memory is not dependent on what you call just the brain or just the intellect aspect of the subtle body alone, because the soul also has all these faculties. So this is what is the subject matter dealt in this particular verse. And this is all to understand that how the Supreme Lord is transcendental, to explain that how the Supreme Lord is transcendental, because we are able to function within this material world. The soul is transcendental. What to speak of the super soul? The soul is transcendental amidst all of this material flux that it is going through. It's actively identifying with all these things like the body and the mind and the false ego and the intelligence. It's identifying strongly with all of these things, and it's very much involved and absorbed in all of these things. Still, the soul remains transcendental. So what to speak of the Supreme Lord, even though appearing as the super soul in each and every, along with each and every soul, he is also transcendental. In fact, because of his presence, the soul actually remembers. And the purport also stated, the verse, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smitir jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedyo vedanta kriteva vidyeva chaham. So matta smitir jnanam apohanam cha. Here in this particular commentary, the word apohanam is translated as sleep. or forgetfulness. Apohanam is generally called as forgetfulness, but here in this particular context, the author is, the commentator is taking it as sleep, because that is also one of the forgetfulness. That literally we cannot tolerate life if we cannot forget it for 6 to 8 hours every day. It becomes unbearable for the soul to be able to function within this body without this function of sleep. And it is, in one sense, trying to forget. The soul becomes tired, mind becomes tired, and in that way, it needs a break. Even though the mind is active within, still, that is not considered a great quality of sleep either. So, in this world, we become tired. We need forgetfulness. From one species to another species, from one body to another body, when we actually go through this material journey, we need forgetfulness. Without that, we won't be able to survive, enjoy, and suffer in the next body. So, all such conditions of remembrance and forgetfulness are all because of the super soul within the heart. So, spiritual life, of course, in the process of bhakti yoga, it's usually the emphasis is remembering the Supreme Lord, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, all of these things about the Supreme Lord. You hear about the Supreme Lord, you actually chant about the Supreme Lord, sing on about the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, and remember the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. So that is the main process, 9 processes of devotional service. However, if you read Prahlad Maharaj, who speaks that verse as part of his prayers in the 7th canto, if you read carefully through all of those verses, he spends a fair amount of time explaining the uncomfortable situation of the soul within this material world, how it's struggling in this material world, and he speaks about the concept of soul and illusion that it is going through, and how inconvenient it is, and how disrespectful it is for the conditioned soul. So we think material life as a joyous thing. We are very absorbed in our false egos and are lost in illusion, and we take pride in the material facilities and achievements we have, and we are very much uh, absorbed in those things, and we consider that as a very valuable thing. I live in a first world country, or I have such and such house, or I have such and such laptop, I have such and such mobile phone. So we take pride and we identify with those things and create an identity based on our material possessions and facilities that we have due to illusion. But if we read Prahlad Maharaj's prayer, he very clearly shows us the mirror that these are all things that actually takes the soul away from its original state, which is to be situated as the servant of the Supreme Lord happily in that original state and serving. And in service, the soul actually becomes satisfied. Love is experienced through service. Love is not experienced just through empty words. It's not a, what do you call, theoretical concept. Love is usually expressed through service. And anyone who serves, naturally, by accepting and by giving, we experience the heart. Heart becomes satisfied and experiences the love, care, shelter, and all of these things. So that is why it is very important that in the name of spiritual life, we cannot become very impersonal, even within our families and friends. So we need to have that service attitude, and people will actually experience that, and they will also be touched by our attitude of service and love. Sometimes when they cannot actually just accept the philosophy directly. So it is very important part of our service to our family that we express Krishna's affection through our service. Of course, the details will change for each one's life. It could be different depending on how the others are behaving. how that love is expressed in different circumstances. But in principle, we cannot think that I'm a devotee and my family and friends sometimes are not devotees, so I don't need to serve them or I don't need to express affection. We express affection, we express love, everything we do as a representative of the Supreme Lord and our spiritual masters. And we are carriers of bhakti. And through our behavior, others will receive bhakti. So it is our personal responsibility how we behave so that others can actually appreciate and receive devotional service through us. So, as I was mentioning, that how Prahlad Maharaj speaks about the inconvenience of material life as a majority theme, is why if you just divide Prahlad Maharaj's prayers into themes, you will see that he speaks about the inconvenient nature of material life, the illusory nature of material life, and the struggles of the spirit soul in the material body and material world a lot. Why? Because until we understand that we are in a illusory situation and this is temporary, until we understand that, we won't take to devotional service seriously. Even if we emotionally start practicing devotional service, on one side we will be very we will come across as very strict and sincere in our devotional service, and on the other hand we will be attached to our lower natures. So there will be that contrast constantly. On one side we speak high things, but we will also be struggling with base things. So that is because we don't actually give enough attention to the situation of the soul in the material world. And actually, how here Bhagavatam is focusing on understanding these concepts. These are not just technical verses that are boring to be glossed over so that we can just read about Radha and Krishna's pastimes alone. Because until we understand these things and until we actually endeavor to detach ourselves from our material desires, our sadhana will not actually be situated in a pure platform. So we are not like yogis who's going to just meditate on I'm not this body, I'm not this body all the time. However, you see how much emphasis Srila Prabhupada kept on this concept of that we are not these bodies, we are spirit souls. Majority of Prabhupada's lecture, even in festival days, will not be complete without Prabhupada touching on that point. Why? Not because it is a foundation, not because it is an ABC of spiritual life and Prabhupada just spoke ABC. No, that is the most foundational thing. Without that, the rest of the spiritual life is an illusion. So that is the difference between Sahajiyas and and the mood of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur or Bhakti Vinod Thakur or Srila Prabhupada, that we as devotees don't gloss over basic philosophy thinking it is just uh, is for newcomers, it's for beginners, and I can just hear and chant about higher things. Yes, we are all supposed to hear and chant about Radha and Krishna. There is no doubt about it. But as long as we are not completely transcendental, we haven't completely overcome the influence of the three modes, and we are still under the three modes, and we haven't fully realized the transcendental nature of the soul and the spirits and the Supreme Lord. It's a gradual process. It's not going to happen overnight. So we take shelter of hearing chanting about Krishna and his pastimes very clearly. However, never neglecting the fact that we do have to regularly remind ourselves that we are within this body and we are still attached to it. So, regularly remind ourselves about the basic philosophy. And we can see this mood in the Krishna book by Srila Prabhupada. In Krishna book, even while discussing pastimes like the gopis, clothes being stolen, Krishna stealing the garments of gopis, or Krishna dancing with the gopis, even the Rasa Panchadhyaya. In all these chapters, also, Prabhupada would consistently bring about basic philosophy regularly to give a proper context. So, because it is not very easy to actually overcome the illusory identification we have with this body. It has been there deeply for millions and millions of lifetimes. So it's not very easy to overcome. So never underestimate basic philosophy. Don't disrespect it. Don't jump over it for the sake of so-called high advanced subject matters. Yes, there is nothing wrong in hearing about the pastimes of Krishna. However, if we hear with a bodily concept of life, that will not help us become purified. So, yes, we should hear the pastimes of Krishna. At the same time, we should also hear from the place of the identifying with the spirit soul and praying that to Krishna that we are currently conditioned, and by his mercy we can be relieved from this illusory identification, not by our own strength. So when we do our bhajan, when we do our sadhana, we bring the problem to Krishna and pray to Krishna, and Krishna's mercy will help us get purified. It is not our own sadhana. We are not the doers. We are not, it's not by the strength of our own sadhana we get purified. That is again false ego coming through in the name of devotional service. It's only Krishna's mercy ultimately that purifies us, that uplifts us, and brings us back to the spiritual realm. So, without Krishna's mercy, our efforts alone are useless. So, at the same time, we cannot sit around and waiting Krishna's mercy will come without doing any effort. So, our duty is to show to Krishna, as Prabhupada says, the child that cries the loudest will get the attention. So, our sadhana is to get the attention of Krishna. So, when his mercy comes, we will be purified. So, never neglect or never think it is boring to understand the basic philosophy and the technicalities of the verse, nor to do neglect Krishna's pastimes as something which is only for someone super advanced. Of course, it needs to be read with guidance, but still, our process is to chant Hare Krishna and worship the deities and hear about Krishna and remember his pastimes and read Srimad Bhagavatam, be in the association of devotees, serve the devotees, develop an attitude of service and develop an attitude of servant, visit the holy places. And in this way, we want to more and more become absorbed in Krishna. And as long as we are within this body under the influence of the illusion, always have to be grounded that we need the mercy of Krishna to overcome this illusory conception, and we are still within it. So regularly remind ourselves of where our feet is. Our eyes can be focused on high spiritual matters, but we need to understand where our feet is, because that is where we are today. We cannot wish our way to a spiritual consciousness. We have to slowly endeavor, and when we receive Krishna's mercy, then we will be uplifted. Thank you all. Hare Krishna. If there are any comments or thoughts?
Thank you, dear devotees. Just briefly, Gaur Sharan Prabhu, while other devotees are preparing their pertinent questions, I am attached to my family, to my father, and I can never imagine, much less tell him or act like he is not my father. Is that the end result of the detachment? How does it, what does it look like when somebody has realized that they're not the body? How do they treat their families and loved ones?
An advanced devotee is supposed to actually be compassionate to everyone. If you read the symptoms of a devotee who is dear to Krishna in the chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, it's very clear that this person is actually dear, like compassionate to everyone. So if we could be compassionate to everyone, why not someone who's within the immediate family?
Thank you. Any special treatment for our family? We
That will always be there. Even Prabhupada was concerned about his family.
Mhm.
He did
Yes.
some arrangements. Yeah, at the last stage of his life after becoming a sannyasi.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that example. Janitai Prabhu is carrying us in his loving hands. Jai Shri Shri Radha Muladhar. Jai Shri Gaur Sharan Prabhu. Wonderful class. Thank you.
Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Darshan time, dear devotees. You're not the body, but please turn on your camera. See, Jamuna Jai is not the body, but look how carefully she dressed up. She respects the body because Jamuna Jai's body belongs to Lord Chaitanya's movement, and she's taking good care of the body. Beans, you're not the body. You're not your hairy body.
Yay. The spiritual master. Thank you, Lord. By His grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering. In the mercy of Krishna, my only wish is to have my consciousness purified, emanating from His lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. It opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, friend of the poor and the Lord and master of the devotees. Oh, Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your Lord's feet. They will pain be spread all over the three worlds. We take shelter at your Lord's feet.
Temple Room Key. Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Afterglow. Jamuna Jaya, what's your reflection? What's your takeaway?
um, I'm going to do this quickly so I can put my hand back in my pocket. Yeah, I mean, I think what Gaur Sharan was saying was like, that's something we never should be forgetting, that we're a spirit soul, which is different from the body. And we fall too much into the body, the concept of life, we're doomed. The body with its temporality and its aversions and its likes and dislikes. So he's right. Prabhupada said it over and over and over again because it's easy for us to think it, but to really realize it is something we need to hear again and again and again. So I always appreciate Gaur Sharan's no nonsense kind of class. He's like, this is what it is, people. Get with the program. So I really appreciate it. And I appreciated his answer to your question. Krishna does say in 12th chapter of Gita, like the person that is a friend to everyone and isn't trouble to anyone, that it's really we express our loving kindness. Radha Swami once said, if you love the parent, you have to love the child. And one way we can express our love to Krishna is express our love to his children, which is everyone and everything in the planet. So, Haribol.
Thank you, Jamuna Jaya. Thank you very much. Put your hands right back in the pocket. Put your loving hands back in the pocket. Jai. Jai. Thank you very much. Okay, well then, Narottam Nitai Prabhu is raising his hand. Narottam Nitai Prabhu.
It's a very inspiring class. I wanted to say that, a lot of times I've asked devotees, how can we, sometimes I feel the trick is all to always remember Krishna, never to forget him, and how to actually do that. Many times devotees reference Srila Prabhupada's prayers on the Jaladuta and things like that. So I guess the point is to just, incrementally dedicate our lives to Krishna, you know, um, as much as possible. And I don't know, it was just an amazing class. It, yeah, it's nice to be serious about Krishna consciousness. That's what I'll say. None else.
Thank you, Narottam Nitai Prabhu. Thank you for taking the process seriously. Jai. Okay, any further contributions to the yagya? We need to hear again and again. We need to hear about Krishna. We need to hear how wonderful is Krishna again and again. And then it'll be easy to stay Krishna conscious and transcend the bodily conception of life, and all these other things are very easy with Krishna. Okay, so my biggest takeaway from today's class is that the child who cries the loudest will get the attention he's seeking. So Annabelle, Isaiah, Sky, and Sage, please cry out for Krishna very loudly. Very loudly.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Wow. Thank you so much, our junior choir. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's hard to tell who was the loudest. Sky was very loud. Sage was loud. Isaiah was loud. Annabelle was loud. Everybody was very sincere. Thank you very much, dear devotees, for showing us how it's done.
Mama.
Bye bye. Hare Krishna.